Okay, so this is problem 1.4.81, and they ask us to solve by using the quadratic formula, and this is what we're given. And so we know that anytime we're using the quadratic formula, we want to be able to put something in the form that is set to 0. So we want the quadratic set to 0 where we have everything on one side. And we can see clearly what the coefficients are of the squared term, the first power term, and then the constant. And our variable here is t. I've written that in x. It's the same idea. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do in this problem in order to solve it is we need to get everything on one side. So I'm going to need to take this t and distribute. So this will be t squared plus t. And then if I want to take this stuff over to this side, I'm going to subtract t squared and subtract the t. Okay, so that's going to give me 0 over here. And then here I've got 2t squared minus t squared, so that's just t squared. I have a minus t and a plus 4. So those aren't like terms, so I'm just going to bring them along. Okay, so coefficient of my squared term here is 1. So a is equal to 1. The coefficient of t is negative 1, so b is negative 1. And then our constant term is 4, so that's c equals 4. And we know that our quadratic formula is t, and that's either t or x, however you want to think of it. So it's negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, and this is all over 2a. And those a, b's, and c's are the a, b's, and c's that we have when it's written in standard form like this. Okay. All right. So what we can do is we can set, or we can plug in our values here into our expression, and then just evaluate that expression. So what we're looking at here then is, can you see those? Okay, kind of. So we're looking at t is equal to negative b, and b is a negative 1. Kind of. Okay, and then we have plus or minus the square root of b squared, so that's negative 1 squared, minus 4 times a is 1 and c is 4, and this is all over 2 times 1. Okay, so this is t is equal to, you know, the opposite, 2 negatives in a row is positive, so 1 plus or minus negative 1 squared is 1. We've got 4 times 1 times 4, so that's 16, so this is minus 16. And this is all over 2, and it's minus 16 because of the minus sign out front here. Okay. All right, so if we simplify, we're looking at t is equal to 1 plus or minus the square root of negative 15 over 2. Now, the person that asked this question, that emailed me this question, was asking about the I. They were seeing that there's an imaginary number in the answer, and their question was basically about that. Okay, so we need to recall that I is equal to the square root of a negative 1, and I is an imaginary number. And so whenever we end up with a negative under a radical, it's not defined in the real number system. So we jump into the complex number system where it is defined, and and we simplify it in that way. So really what I would do here is I would say, well, and I'm kind of taking a liberty here to write it like this, but we would say it's the square root of a negative 1 times the square root of 15, and really we can't really do that because the product rule doesn't apply in the complex numbers, but we'll go with it so that we can see that the square root of negative 1 here is I. So this actually becomes t is equal to 1 plus or minus I times the square root of 15 over 2, and that would be how we would simplify this. You can't leave that negative there. We do want, under the radical, we do want to go ahead and use the I to represent that. Okay, so this then would be your answer. So if you end up with a positive number under this radical, then you're not going to have an imaginary number. So you won't see an I in the answer. And that's the difference between some of those problems in this homework assignment.